Hi, here we have giraffes on Salt Lake. Normally you'd find giraffes out in the bushes in the long trees browsing. The most preferred tree that they browse on is the whistling acacia. So today we want to try and understand the relationship between giraffes and the whistling acacias and how they contribute on well-being of these particular trees and the ants that we find in the trees. Here now we have a whistling acacia, and the Latin name is Acacia drepanolobium, or if you like you could call it Vachelia drepanolobium. And just recently they were changed from acacia and now it's either Senegalia or Vachelia, and you can tell by looking at the thorns on them. So if you have straight thorns, that's a Vachelia, and then if you have a hook thorn, that's a Senegalia. Anyway, the common name is a whistling acacia, and the reason as to why they are called whistling acacia is because these guards here, when these particular ants you see on them here, they make holes, and then when the wind blows through them, they whistle. It's like when the wind is blowing through them. So that's why they are called whistling acacia. But back to the reason as to why we are here, as I mentioned before, is that browsers like giraffes prefer feeding on these trees, and that way it affects their well-being. So they've come to learn how to be symbiotic with these particular ants. And this is a cocktail ant, and you can see why they're called cocktail. So when they're attacking, they lift their tails up, and basically they cock their tail up, as you can see here. So what the tree does is that the tree provides a home, provides a nest inside these guards for the ants, and also the nectar. The tree produces nectar, so they feed on nectar and also have a home. But in return, whenever the tree is attacked, whenever something is browsing on the tree, they would come out and try to defend the tree. And how they do that is that some of them would sacrifice themselves and go into whoever is browsing on them, into their tanks, and if you crush one, then they have formic acid, which doesn't taste really good, and whoever is browsing will just move away. So in this case, the giraffe, when the giraffe is feeding on them, when the moment they disturb this particular tree, some of these ants would sacrifice themselves. They would come on the leaves here and they would get ingested with the leaves, and that way the formic acid will come out and the giraffes will give up and leave. Then there's a second ant that also lives in this particular tree, and it's called Crematogaster Negriceps. So Crematogaster Negriceps belongs to the same family as the cocktail ants, but is slightly different. And they're different that they're all black, their body, as the name suggests, they are black, Negriceps, so black, meaning black. And they're on this one, this particular tree here. And if you cannot, this is a different tree. So there's that plant over there, and then there's this one here. And there's a reason for that. So I don't know if you can be able to see them. They're quite slender and tiny. I've got one here. So this is Crematogaster Negriceps. Okay. Now, how these ones behave is slightly different from the cocktail ants. These ones, what they do is they try to cut off buds. They, like if the tree is growing new buds, they chop off the buds so that this tree doesn't get into contact with the next tree on the other side. And the reason for that is because there's competition. So they're trying, each and every species of ant is trying to colonize a particular tree. So here we got cocktail ants colonizing this particular tree, but here we got the Negriceps colonizing this particular tree. So Negriceps wants to make sure that this tree doesn't communicate to this other tree, and that their branches doesn't get into contact, so that they keep this tree to themselves. Again, they also feed on nectar, and they need the guards for survival. So they want to protect this tree from getting into contact with the next tree so that they can survive on this one. Then there's a third ant that also depends on the whistling acacia for survival. And this is Tetraponera penzigi. This is a different ant, slightly big. I can't find one here, but they're slightly bigger than what we've seen so far. They are called Tetraponera penzigi. So what they do, because for them they don't need nectar, and they don't need nectar or anything from this tree. They make sure that they kill off the nectar producing birds, so that they again colonize the trees. But in this case, they don't want the tree to produce anything useful to other ants. So that way they keep the tree to themselves. But that leads to the tree to being unhealthy, because as you can see, the Negriceps prunes the tree, and that makes sure that the tree grows tall and healthy. And then the cocktail ants protects the tree from browsers. So again, it makes sure that the tree grows nice and healthy. So all these ants can only survive, can only come to stay in these particular trees if there is a browser browsing on the trees. So only if there are giraffes coming to feed on these trees is then when the trees will produce the guards, and then the guards will provide home to the ants. It has been noted that in areas that there are no browsers interfering with these trees, they don't produce the guards. So it's an interesting observation, it's an interesting relationship between the ants, between the browsers, and between the tree. And it's something that it's so amazing to understand and just try to observe how nature interact and how nature works together. So again, this is something that you only get from magical Kenya, and a reason for you to be here. If we don't have animals, we still have trees that are nice and interesting. So keep it magical Kenya, and like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to turn on your notification, because we are always bringing something magical.